halls of West Virginia resound with the sound of Golden Blue football.
Almost heaven, West Virginia.
Now let's bring on the Mountaineer. Goes around about the 50, the 10, the 5. A touchdown, West Virginia. He did it.
He did it. Patrick White. Touchdown, Tavon Austin.
But Don Nehlen's Mountaineers enjoy walking in where angels feared to tread.
I think you think that these guys are going to fall over dead for you. Well, I got news for you. They're going to punch you right in the mouth. It's Mountaineer pride.
Nothing cheap, nothing dirty, but West Virginia football. West Virginia football.
Leave no doubt tonight. They shouldn't have played the old Golden Blue. Not this night.
They've done it. They've done it. A perfect season. And the Mountaineers, for the first time in history, undefeated and untied.
Don Nehlen and his Mountaineers, for the second time, have finished a regular season with an unblemished mark.
Ain't no stopping the Golden Blue.
And now recorded from the CRW studios in Almost Heaven, West Virginia, it's the Country Roads webcast with your host, Jordan Cruz.
What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the CRW podcast, back here for episode 213 in season 7. And what a difference a few weeks makes from our last episode. We were previewing the final game of the season, wondering if it could potentially be Neil Brown's final game at WVU. Now, flash forward a few weeks later, not only was that his final game, now we're previewing a bowl game, which is going to be, super early bowl game for the Mountaineers on December 17th with an interim head coach in place in Chad Scott. But now, by this point, we actually already know who the new head man's going to be. It's the old head man, Rich Rod, returning to WVU to coach the Mountaineers in 2025. So, big difference over the past few weeks since the last time we've had a chance to put out an episode. But if you only listen to us on the audio side, hopefully you've been following us on YouTube as well, where we've been covering it throughout live streams there on the channel. But of course, we're going to lead this off talking a little bit about the upcoming coaching change to Rich Rod. Can't not address the elephant in the room. Like I said, we've talked about it on the YouTube side, but we want to address it here on this podcast episode as well. So we'll lead off with that. And then, of course, we'll preview the Frisco Bowl against the number 25 Memphis Tigers and provide our prediction for that game and talk a little bit WVU basketball to tail end. But joining me, of course, to help me do all of that, my great co-host, Steven. Steven, what's going on, man?
What's going on, my man? Glad to be back. Feeling good today on this, what Pat McAfee kept calling it on his show earlier, this Rich Rod Thursday.
Hey, that's right.
This is what I'm going to keep calling it that. Ecstatic about that news, ecstatic about a lot of things about the future of WVU athletics. And I think, like you said, how different things have been or have become in the last couple of weeks. I believe it, it's just a microcosm of what college athletics are in today's age, man. I mean, things move fast, they change overnight. You never really know what direction things may go for a lot of situations. But I think this one right now for most of the fan base, this is early Christmas, if you will.
Yeah. I'd agree with that opinion, 100%. And as Steven said there, Rich Rod Thursday. Full disclosure, we're recording this on Thursday, December 12th, the day that the Rich Rod news became official. The press release came out from the university this morning. Of course, we've got the press conference coming up Friday, December 13th, going to be a part of the Pat McAfee show, which will be live in Morgantown at the WVU Coliseum from noon to 3. The press conference will start at 1:30, so it'll be live on ESPN there as well and on YouTube if you want to watch Rich Rod's press conference. If you're listening to this on Thursday or early on Friday, be sure and check that out. Hopefully it's not after the fact that you're listening to it. And if you did, hopefully you did get a chance to check out the press conference, as we know how these podcasts work as we're previewing the game coming up on December 17th here in this episode. But nonetheless, we got to start off talking a little bit about the hiring of Rich Rod, his return, as Steven kind of teased there a little bit. We're both proponents of this hire. It was kind of our favorite candidate throughout the process. The more and more it went along, and it ends up being the one that West Virginia hires. As it's now official, Rich Rodriguez named West Virginia's 36th football coach, as we share on the screen for you guys watching on the YouTube side, the press release from the university. But for you guys listening on the audio side, I will read off the comments from Ren Baker and Rich Rodriguez there that were shared in the university's official release. Ren Baker starts it off here saying, "We are thrilled to welcome Coach Rodriguez and his family back home. Coach Rodriguez understands what it takes to win at West Virginia, and I believe he will pour his heart, soul, and every ounce of his energy into our program. I'm convinced Coach Rodriguez wants what is best for West Virginia, WVU, and West Virginia football, and I'm excited about the future of our program. And then he goes on here to see Rich Rod's comments in the release here. And Rich Rod states, I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to be the head football coach at West Virginia University. My family and I are filled with gratitude to lead the Mountaineer football program again and look forward to working with the many supporters, fans, and friends to build the best football program in America. And, of course, ends it with Take Me Home as the state native returns home, Stephen. We love that story. As I accidentally put myself on the screen,
Kick me
so
out
they
there
hit the
for a
wrong
second.
button. But, kick you out of here for a second, get myself to main stage. My bad there. But nonetheless, I know we're both excited about this hire, but just kind of some reactions, throughout the day now as we've had some chance to have it marinate, have it be, official, come down, don't have to have any more apprehensiveness and worry about contract talks falling through or anything. It's now official. Rich Rod's coming home. We got the press conference scheduled. How are you feeling now that everything's done, signed, sealed, and delivered, the return of the King?
I'm absolutely thrilled, and even more thrilled at the more, if you're like me and Cruz, the more podcasts and shows that you delve into. One of my favorite ones that I've watched so far, the in the Gun podcast with Owen Schmidt and Jed Drenning and all of those guys. They had Pat McAfee on there this morning. And he was, the things that Pat McAfee has been saying, I'm sure that a lot of people watch his show, but the things that he said on that podcast specifically have got me even more excited, and that's saying something. Just saying that, that from the times that he's talked to Rich Rodriguez since all the news has broke, we talked a little bit on our live show last night, about how retrade coaches don't always work, and it has to be the right situation, the right timing, everything has to align. And I'm a firm believer that this is a good situation for Rich to come back into, and I think that things are aligning in a good place. But I think that more importantly, Rich looks at this as an opportunity to come back and finish what he started and fix what he also and what we all. I mean, it's no secret that he didn't leave in the best situation. That's obviously true. But I think that's one of the things that he wants to come back and correct and leave a better taste in the mouths of Mountaineer fans, I guess.
Fix his legacy.
And he's always said that if he got to come back, that he would never leave. And I truly believe that. I mean, what he wants is what we want. I mean, there's a large part of this Mountaineer fan base that believes that West Virginia could reach the mountaintop again. There's a large part that believes that we'll never be as good as we once were again. But every time, from the research that I've done, from the times that West Virginia's been good in the past, every single time that they've had years that weren't so good in the future, they always thought we'll never be back there again. Those were our glory days. And then they reach newer and better mountaintops, as they move forward. And I can't wait. I cannot wait. I am thrilled, and I'm a firm believer that this is going to be what it takes to put West Virginia in contention to compete for Big 12 championships and compete in the college football playoff moving forward.
Yep.
And as jokingly as that's been said in the past decade or so, I truly think that this, metaphorically, I guess, puts West Virginia on the map. We've been on the map, but that's, you know what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, it's going to be even more so now with everything that's going to be involved. The former player support that includes Pat McAfee, game day, everything that could potentially come with that. It's going to really, the program's going to reach new heights. We're going to have more money than we've ever had to build a new roster this offseason that's going to be more talented than ones that we've had in recent memory. And we know how Rich Rod can find players to fit his scheme as well already. And as we've talked about in the past, what really excites me about this is the last time he was here, and the reason that he left is he couldn't get the amenities that he needed. The athletic department wouldn't work with him. Now he has Ren Baker, who will be willing to work with him. And also now he has the facilities, all these upgrades he's going to be blown away by. I'm sure he'll talk about them in the press conference. And of course, he also is going to have the money and their ability to go get the players that he needs as well. So it's going to be so impressive to see what happens, I think, when Rich Rod has the resources, because, you can go back to the tenure before, like you said, 3 straight double-digit win seasons at the end of his tenure there at WVU. Excellent tenure, 60-26 overall record, incredible job. And he was kind of doing more with less then. Now he's going to have the resources, so it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. It could, as Steven mentioned, be new mountaintops, new heights for the program potentially, I think. And the excitement is at least back. You're getting that toughness back. You're getting that hard edge back. And also, like I said, Touchdown City is going to return. And that Rich Rod offensive scheme.
And share with our followers and listeners what you hope they bring back, because it really got me going. I don't know if we're allowed to play the song, are we?
No, I'd probably get copyrighted if I threw the song on, but
okay,
I'm sure some people know. If not, they can look it up. Look up, Van Halen right now. It'll immediately jog your memory in the warm up. They used to play it right now.
If you went to games during that era.
Yeah.
Oh man.
That's what they got to bring back, man. That right now circle. I think that they got to bring back all the nostalgia, bring back the train video that we shared in a couple live streams, all that. Go back to it. And then of course everybody's talking glossy helmets. That'd be great as well. Go full on nostalgia with it, man. Let's do it.
I wouldn't put it past them. I think they'll probably bring back those glossy helmets at some point, especially if it starts to gain steam throughout the fan base. And you know how Ren is. Ren's a big fan of the classic look. I mean, you can definitely tell that from everything that his swag that that Letterman jacket, man.
Oh yeah,
I'm not. I
need one of those.
If I can't find one soon, I'm going to be going to Ren Baker's house.
Yeah, can you tell me where you got this jacket?
Yeah,
or can I just get yours and you can buy another one?
Yeah, just give me that one, man. You got plenty of stuff, Ren. Give me that jacket.
Got plenty of money to buy another one. But as far as Rich Rod's concerned, if you haven't seen what Jacksonville State did, I'm planning to go back through and do some film reviews on the channel. So if you're on the audio side, like I said, pop over to the YouTube side, give us a subscription, but also consider becoming a channel member of the CRW channel. I do film reviews there, and I think throughout the off season I'm going to kind of rewatch some Jacksonville State films and we get used to seeing his offense again, which continues to be explosive and work in today's college football. Running back over 1,600 yards. His quarterback was Conference Player of the Year and Newcomer of the Year. Threw for 2,100, ran for 1,300, and they had the number 1 rushing offense in the nation this season in rushing touchdowns with 48. They were also number 2 in rushing yards per game with 267.3 and top 15 in scoring, 37 points per game. So Rich Rod can still get it done offensively. I think we'll be looking to see who he hires as a defensive coordinator and see who he brings over with him from that Jacksonville State staff. All eyes on Rod Smith, Rick Trickett, those type of guys. We'll see what happens. Rod Smith, I believe, is coaching Jacksonville State in their bowl game, and he may be a candidate to get that job. If he doesn't, then maybe he'll come to the WVU. We'll see what happens there. But a lot to cover and a lot of fun stuff here that throughout this offseason we'll be covering in regards to this Rich Rod hire, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about it. It's going to be a fun 8 months with a lot of excitement built up, and it's going to be one of the most anticipated seasons in quite some time there for that 2025 season. But like I said, we'll have plenty of time for that. We got a bowl game to preview. So before we get there, Steven, any final thoughts on the coaching change or Rich Rod or anything before we talk a little bit about the Frisco Bowl where the Mountaineers will meet the Memphis Tigers?
I think the most interesting thing about the coaching staff, like I mentioned last night, is who he brings who he brings or keeps on as the strength and conditioning coach, or if they have a co role in that. Because even though Schmidt talked about that on what I said the mentioned podcast earlier, that was kind of the yin and yang that made it all really, really work. The last time it was at West Virginia was Mike Barwas and Rich Rodriguez together. Mike Barwas, obviously, he's not, in the collegiate coaching ranks anymore. He's moved on to one of the best gyms in America right now, in my opinion, and I think a lot of professional athletes' opinions as well. So we're probably not going to get him. I'm a fan of Mike Joseph, but I'm also a fan of I keep forgetting his last name, but Parker
Whiteman.
Whiteman, yeah. He's from the Barwas coaching tree, so he follows that Barwas method. So interested to see who it is. Excited to see which one it is.
Yeah, that's one thing that we'll definitely be keeping an eye on for sure. Between that, see if Parker comes and they do a co-thing, because Mike Joseph's been here so long, it'd be crazy to see him be replaced. But as you said, you have to have that mesh, though.
Since then, yeah, he got hired as soon as Mike Barwas left, and has been here since. Yep.
Yeah. So it's interesting. We'll be keeping an eye on how that staff builds, and we'll continue to cover it both in podcast episodes and in videos on our YouTube channel. Like I said, hop over there if you're listening on the audio side. But if you are on the video side and you don't check us out and follow us on podcast platforms, be sure to do that. You can listen to us on any of them, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, you name it. Follow us there and leave us a rating if you listen to us on the audio side. We really appreciate that. And you can always check us out at wvsportsnow.com and appreciate them for covering our episodes there as well and hosting them on their site. And they do a great job covering Mountaineer football and sports there on their website as well. But that being said, let's get into the main agenda here of this episode, of course, which is the Frisco Bowl preview and predictions. Yes, the West Virginia Mountaineers still have a bowl game to play. Rich Rod has been named the head coach, but he will probably be there in attendance. But Chad Scott will still be overseeing this team as the interim head coach in the bowl game with the remainder of the staff that's left over from the Neil Brown era. And we'll see, what potentially of those could have a spot on Rich Rod's staff. You got to think some of those West Virginia guys, the Rasheed Marshalls, Blaine Stewarts, Ryan Nealons, have a chance to get a spot on Rich Rod's staff, but that's something else we'll talk about in the future. But as far as the near future, coming up December 17th, this bowl game will be taking place on Tuesday, probably the earliest bowl game I think that the Mountaineers have ever played as far as I can remember. And they're facing a ranked opponent here. Yeah, I thought that it would be. The earliest I can remember was like early 20s, and this is December 17th, which it just goes to show how many bowl games there are and how much bowl games have changed, because as early as it is, it's still only the second or third earliest, not even the very earliest bowl game, which is crazy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look how much times have shifted from, how much hype we used to put on getting a New Year's Day game,
Yeah.
That used to be the mecca of bowl games, no matter what game it was. I mean, obviously you had your tiers, but if you got a New Year's Six bowl, you were in a good bowl.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, now you've only got a select few that play on that day, and I don't think anybody pays attention to them because the college football playoff.
I was about to say the playoff now is kind of overtaking that. There's a few, but very seldom any in January. And if you do play in one, you almost get overshadowed because of the playoff, like you said. So definitely whole different world in a lot of ways in college football, as we've talked about, of course, NIL transfer portal, but the way bowl games function now with the CFP, which super excited to see the 12-team CFP this year and how that plays out. And we're going to talk a little bit towards the tail end. Of course, we've been doing our Around the Big 12 segments all year, and we're going to do one at the tail end where we talk about the other bowl games going on around the conference. And, of course, Arizona State will be in that CFP, and we'll talk a little bit about them as well when we get there after we get done previewing the game here for the Mountaineers, where they will take on the number 25 ranked Memphis Tigers, who won 10 games this season, 10-2. Of course, West Virginia coming in at 6-6, as we said, 9:00 p.m. kickoff, televised on ESPN, and it's actually the first ever meeting between West Virginia and Memphis. Memphis's head coach Ryan Silverfield in his 5th season there, and has really done a good job following up Mike Norvell. He's 41-21 overall there, and really strong in the past few seasons. Let's start it off a little bit, Stephen, talking about the Memphis offense against the West Virginia defense. Obviously, we know that was the key area that really caused a lot of the struggles for West Virginia this year, was the struggles of the West Virginia defense. And unfortunately, I think this matchup will favor Memphis. Spoiler alert before we even preview it, just kind of telling you my thoughts there on how this will shake out. When I give you some of these numbers here, you'll know why. But the offensive coordinator is Tim Cramsey. He's also the quarterback's coach. And I highlight that because their quarterback at Memphis is really their star player there, Seth Hennigan. He is the all-time leader at Memphis in completions, passing yards, and touchdowns. And he is also the all-time leader in their conference there, the American Athletic Conference, in passing yards as well. 4-year starter. This year he's thrown for 3,200 yards, 23 touchdowns, and only 6 interceptions. So that's one reason I don't like this matchup right there, Stephen, is the fact that they have a great quarterback that's the all-time leader at their school and in their conference in, a lot of passing stats.
Yeah, and I mean, they're 10-2. I mean, they have been accustomed to winning football games. So I mean, no matter what their schedule looked like this year, whether they play lesser competition or not, I mean, this is a talented group, and they've been able to score a lot of points this year. West Virginia hasn't been able to stop a lot of people from scoring a lot of points this year. That doesn't spell a lot of success for West Virginia's team, especially you got Josiah on the fence. He's in the portal. Is he playing in the bowl game? I would imagine not if he's in the portal.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
but there's some debate on if he may return as well. We'll see what happens. I'd like
that's
to see it.
That's the interesting part. If he decides to return, does he still sit out the bowl game, still come back in the spring,
sit out the bowl game, come back after?
Which, I mean, I don't know. That was what Wren said yesterday. I don't know if it was yesterday. I think it was. He spoke on the bowl game and everything, and he was talking about how he was hoping that we got a bowl game that was before the portal ended, because if you have a bowl game that is going to take place after the portal ends, or whenever the portal opens, I'm getting confused. I'm confusing myself.
Yeah, we'll get your bowl game out of the way, and then by the time it's done, the portal's still open, I think is,
Right.
the goal there.
Right. That way that you
Probably
don't
the
have
one that was still
players that
early.
are like wanting to sit out because they have to get in the portal.
Right.
This way players have a chance. He says that they're all excited to play in the bowl game. I believe him, because we got some fiery guys on this team. I know things didn't shake out the way that we wanted to with a lot of them, but the amount of heart that a lot of them showed, I mean, that's undeniable, especially Garrett Green. But I think that, this being an earlier bowl game is going to be a positive for West Virginia and the amount of guys that we're going to be able to play.
Yeah. Well, I think you've seen the staff, keep everyone balled in. Obviously, the recruiting class and being able to sign the players that they did shows that. And they've, kept their head down and grinded throughout bowl prep. And I think it's a good thing that you point out there is most players, the players that are still on the team are all playing in the bowl game. Garrett Green, as you mentioned there, Wyatt Milam's going to play as well. Now it's up to the coaching staff how much they choose to play him. Sounded like Chad Scott felt like they weren't going to play him a ton, but Wyatt Milam himself is choosing to play in the bowl game. But other than that, only a handful of transfers out that won't play. Those being Raleigh Collins at linebacker spot, Josiah Jackson, one of the defensive backs, tight end Will Dixon, who hasn't been playing this year really anyways, TJ Crandall, who was a defensive back, and as we mentioned, Josiah Trotter. Those are the only players you won't see. For the most part, West Virginia will be, with their
Jalen
roster,
Anderson?
save for the players that are out from injury. And Jalen Anderson as well. Yeah, don't let me forget that. He did enter the portal. So if West Virginia gets a third running back in there, it'll be one of the freshmen most likely, or maybe you could see a Clay Ash get in there as well as far as when West Virginia's offense has the ball. But I did want to mention some of the players were sitting out. But continuing on, talking a little bit about the Memphis offense here. We mentioned the quarterback Seth Innigan and how dangerous he is, and obviously will be, interesting to see if West Virginia can defend that a little bit better, as the past defense was such a weakness for the Mountaineers this year. But the receivers to look out for when he goes to that passing game, the main target is Rock Taylor, leads the team in catches and yards, 61 receptions, 834 yards. And then you got Demir Blankumsey. He leads the team in touchdowns there. He has 557 yards and 5 receiving touchdowns. But the scary part is, it kind of worries me a little bit because it's similar to kind of the way that the Texas Tech offense looked when we went into that game. Not only are they going to hurt you with that passing offense if they want, but they have a good running back that can really hurt you as well. Their running back is actually their highest graded player on their offense, according to PFF, 82.8 grade there, and he's ran for nearly 1,300 yards in the season and 17 touchdowns on the ground he has of his own as well. So definitely, a dangerous Memphis offense that can hurt you in multiple ways. I personally think that they've got the advantage in this matchup, Stephen, but what are kind of your final thoughts here when we talk about this side of the ball, the West Virginia defense trying to go up against this Memphis offense, doing it without Josiah Trotter, doing it with kind of an interim staff in place? Do you think the West Virginia defense has a chance to make some stops, or do you give the advantage to Memphis and think West Virginia's offense is going to really have to perform well for them to have a shot in this one?
Gosh, man, I want to give some credit to our defense, but 1,300 yards and 17 touchdowns for that running back, my Lord Almighty, they're not even going to need to throw the ball, and they're going to be able to do what they want if they throw the ball. That's what scares me. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to our defense, but yeah, I do. I think our offense is going to have to come to play if we want a chance to win this football game. And they could surprise me. They've came out and surprised me a lot this year, but
yeah,
I mean, frankly speaking, I mean, from what I went back and watched, a lot of the times that our defense has played a lot better than what we thought that they would, it's been whenever those offenses surprised us and didn't throw the ball as much as they really kind of should have.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have we talk about that it surprised us that they didn't throw the ball on us more?
All right. Well, that's why I think we had finally the big blowout in the final game of the season, because it was like Texas Tech went and watched the rest of the season and said, "Why is everybody just throwing the ball like 40, 50 times? We're going to throw the ball at least like 40 times." Yeah. And you see what happened. So I'm worried about Memphis doing that, but also, as you mentioned, the running back's good. So even if they choose to, have a different game plan and run it a little bit, we'll have to see what happens there, especially when you don't have Trotter, who's one of your best linebackers coming downhill to stop that run,
Yeah, that's exactly my first thought too. Was like, well, if you ain't got Josiah in the middle, I mean, you're not going to have. And that's all due respect to Ben Cutter and
and Reed Carrico's
and Reed Carrico and all those guys. They played lights out this season, but they're just not, in my opinion, they're more physical players than they are coverage players. That's not a bad thing. That's just what it is.
Yeah, I think can be said for a lot of our linebackers that we currently have on the roster, really. But nonetheless, that's kind of our thoughts on the Memphis offense against the West Virginia defense. Let's flip it over, talk a little bit about the other side here, the side where we both are kind of feeling like that West Virginia is going to need to have some success in this game, probably if they want to have a shot to win this one, with how kind of we think the advantage is there for the Memphis offense over the West Virginia defense. But when we look at the other side here, the West Virginia offense against this Memphis defense, we know the Mountaineers, a bit of mixed bag at times, but for the most part, pretty efficient on offense throughout the majority of this season, been able to run the ball successfully yet again, albeit not as good as last year. Passing game up and down at times, but I think hopefully you're able to get some explosive plays in this run game. Garrett Green goes out nicely in his final game. But the Memphis defense that he'll be going up against is coordinated by Jordan Hankins there for the Tigers, and it is that 3 safety defense, which kind of does worry me a little bit. West Virginia struggled at times against those looks when they played the likes of Iowa State and Kansas State. They have the higher skated player on defense is really the main one that we want to talk about here. The big standout you're going to be looking for in this Memphis defense is their linebacker, Chandler Morton, 80.6 grade there on PFF, but he leads the team in tackles, 94, and sacks with 7. So he's definitely their star player there on that Memphis defense that you'll probably see flying around a lot. But some guys in the back end that have made plays is DB Davian Ross. He leads the team with 3 interceptions. They have another DB in Kobe Minor, who's their highest graded coverage player, 75.6 per PFF, and a defensive lineman, William Whitlow, who has 4 sacks of his own. The thing that I've looked at when I've looked at the numbers of this Memphis defense throughout the year, and probably one thing that's helped them be 10-2, is not only that great offense that we talked about there, but their defense has been very opportunistic. It's forced a lot of turnovers. It's going to be a game where taking care of the football is kind of a big key and paramount for West Virginia if they want to emerge victorious here in the Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl, I think, Stephen, because this Memphis defense forces a lot of turnovers. But what is your thoughts here on how the West Virginia offense can match up with them? You think West Virginia will be able to move the ball, score some points? What are your thoughts here on this side of things?
You got to hope so. I think that, with the Chad Scott being interim, you'd hope that puts some emphasis on the offensive structure of this football team. Hopefully he can put some schemes in place. One thing that jumps out to me about this Chandler Martin guy, he's got not 4 forced fumbles, 4 fumble recoveries, and one of those went for a scoop and score and scored a touchdown. So the kid, he's a playmaker. Yeah, they get after it on that side of the ball. And that's all across the board. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They've got 7 other guys that have a fumble recovery this season on top of his 4. So they force fumbles, they force turnovers. This is a good defense along with a good offense. This may be a Memphis team that plays in the American Athletic Conference, but this is a stout group that West Virginia is going to go up against. So West Virginia is going to have to come to play. Whether what I expect, I know we're running the show on talking about what we should expect from this group, but I really have no idea. I don't know what to expect from them. I want to expect a solid running game. Didn't see that in the latter part of the last 2 games the last game rather of the season. I want to see solid receiver production out of this team if we're going to be able to beat Memphis. I don't know that we will see that. We've seen it at times. We've seen it fall off into the complete other direction. Well, you'd hope that they would come to play similar to what last year's bowl game was.
Yeah, gotta hope so. I think that one thing that you pointed out there that I'm really interested to see and watching on this side of things is the West Virginia offense. Does it have any distinct differences that we'll be able to tell from Chad Scott calling the plays for the first time ever? That's going to be something to keep an eye on. And I think something that we can look forward to watching, and something that I'm going to be interested to keep an eye on in this ball game. And I think as far as you mentioned there, as far as, is the team going to show up? Are they going to be balled in and ready to play? Because that's obviously going to be a major key and is always one of the key factors in bowl games, I think. But for me, kind of leads me into a question I want to ask you, because that kind of popped in my head as you were talking about that, is do you feel like that probably the fact that West Virginia has now hired a coach and some of these guys that could potentially return and be on the roster next season know that they have a guy in place and they know that he's probably going to be there watching the bowl game as well? Do you think that helps the buy-in and helps some of these guys say, hey, this could be like an audition for me to get my really good first impression in with the new coach and let him see what I can do? Does that help you in that aspect, you think, with the buy-in and guys being ready for this game maybe?
I hadn't thought about that, but I absolutely, I would think so. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's
I
interesting
think that
angle. I hadn't either.
for a lot of players that, especially some of these younger guys, that really didn't get a chance to really do anything in Neil Brown's system. that really want a chance to prove themselves, yeah, absolutely. And I think it has to be that, if not anything else. I mean, you're already excited because you get to go play in a bowl atmosphere. You got to the 6 wins that you needed to get there, which didn't look very promising. So that's got to feel like some kind of accomplishment for a large part of this roster.
Yeah.
On
And
top
I
of that, I
think
feel like that's got to be what it is.
I do too. And I think that for me, I'd probably give West Virginia a slight advantage here in this matchup against the Memphis defense on this side of things, with the caveat being you're expecting and hoping that they take care of the ball. As we mentioned, Memphis can really force some turnovers, but if West Virginia could have an advantage on this side, then that would really help, play a role in this game. And I think they're going to need to if they want to, be able to emerge victorious, which we're going to get into our keys to victory now
Which
momentarily. But
I will say, if they can take care of the ball against a group that is this physical, the whole mantra of Rich Rodriguez, that's what we're getting back to. Tough man football.
Yep,
You got to
that's
be
right.
tough. If you can hold on and secure the ball against a group like this, I mean, that's got to speak volumes to a coaching staff such as that, you would think, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man. Hard edge for sure. It's a great point as well. But as we get into it, let's talk a little keys to victory now, Stephen. And then, of course, it'll be that time where we'll make our predictions for the Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl, which I believe I heard that the winner of this game, the coach gets iced coffee poured on them, I think is actually the
Is
thing with
that
this one, if
really?
I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, someone
Oh
told me that.
man, what
If
has
I'm not
this game
mistaken.
turned
So
into? You get
these
you
bowl
get
games,
Pop
man, they're
Tarts
always have these
bumped.
crazy promotions. So
You get Pop-Tarts
um,
dumped on you in one bowl, mayo dumped on you in another.
yeah, you get to eat like a
Having a
giant human
Gatorade, man.
Pop-Tart. I mean, you never know what these bowl games are going to do, but that's, I guess, at least part of the fun of them. They're at least trying to make them a little bit more add a little entertainment factor, which is nice, because some people have tried to say bowl games don't mean as much with the CFP, but at least
Right.
there's a little bit of added interest in some of these at this time. And I think in this one we talked a little bit about some of that with Chad Scott calling the plays, and now knowing you got a new coach coming in and maybe trying to make a first impression, and then you got coaches probably trying to put on a good performance as well for potential other jobs, or maybe for the potential wanting to stay and be a part of Rich Rod's staff as well. So those are some X factors. But what about the keys that could help West Virginia get a win in this one and make Chad Scott get that coffee bath maybe potentially at the end of this one, which would be nice to see, because it would be against a ranked opponent. Number 25 Memphis, they have 10 wins on the season, would be an upset win for West Virginia potentially as an underdog going into the Frisco Bowl here in Frisco, Texas, Stephen. But what do you have as the key for West Virginia to be able to do that and pull off this win over Memphis?
I spent the last 15 minutes talking about how West Virginia needs to take care of the ball and limit Memphis turnovers. And I picked turnovers a lot in my keys to victory this season. So for that reason, and for the reason of me mentioning it so much, I'm not going to, in the most perfect opportunity to. I'm gonna say intensity, man. I think the West Virginia's intensity from the jump and from coming out from the start of the second half, I think both of those equally are important in a game like this. I think if you come out very intense and play like we all know that we have the talent to do, I think then at least make it close going into the final quarter, and then put yourself in a position to win. Truthfully speaking, I do think that Memphis is the better football team here, and I think that's just from the way that they've played this year versus the way that we've played this year. I think they are the better football team. So I think West Virginia needs to play a full, complete game of intense football to be able to beat them.
I like it. And I think that is definitely a major key. As we talked about a little bit earlier, that's especially in bowl games, is showing up, being the team that can be ready to play a little bit more, have that extra intensity. That's what's going to make you get a victory. So I like that key. I think for me, it's kind of something we also have kind of highlighted a little bit throughout this. And for me, it's Chad Scott pulling out all the stops. You got to pull out all the stops in this bowl game is my key to victory. And I think if you're Chad Scott, that means, have some fun with it. Open up the offense, do some interesting things, trick plays, unconventional things, anything you've ever wanted to put in the offense, but maybe got vetoed before, break it back out. Have some fun with it. You've had time with bowl prep, and I want to see what he does with it. So I think pulling out all the stops is my key to victory, because as you mentioned, Memphis may be a slightly better team and slightly more together heading into this game or something like that. So
we can beat them, but I
whatever
think
you can have the advantage. You got to pull out all the stops, and you got to have that intensity, as you mentioned.
Yeah. I was going to say, we did finally beat a ranked team under Neil Brown, didn't we? We beat 3 of them.
We've beaten a couple, but I don't think they've ever any ones that have finished the season ranked. I don't think.
Well, how
was the
funny
thing
would
of it.
that be? How
Except for
funny
maybe
would
one.
that be if the first game back,
Without
Pascal Brown as we beat a ranked team?
I know it'd be super ironic for sure,
Yeah.
man. But let's talk about it then. Do we think that's going to happen, Stephen? As we've reached that point of the episode, time for our score predictions for this one. I'll take the wheel first on this one, actually, because some people may have already even had mine spoiled a little bit. I'm going to keep the same prediction that I had there. If you guys haven't, check out my appearance on the Course of Life podcast. Alex, who will be there in the Frisco Bowl in Texas, covering the game there in the press box, was kind enough to invite me on and cover things from the West Virginia side and ask for my prediction there. So I'm going to stick with the same one that I gave him. I think that, West Virginia will have a good mentality. I think Chad Scott is a coach that has great energy, and he's going to bring that to this team and to this bowl game. And hopefully he does pull out all the stops, as we mentioned there, and help West Virginia keep it close. But I think at the end of the day, even in a shootout, I think Memphis will outlast us a little bit. So I'm going to go Memphis 38, WVU 35 for my prediction here for the Frisco Bowl. Steven, what do you got, my friend?
I'm not telling you, man.
You ain't even going to lay it out, huh?
I'm pivoting.
Okay.
I swear to God, if that's what the score ends
pivot
up
in real
being
time.
and we lose, because I swear that's what I had. I
Is
had
that what you was
38,
going with
35. I went 38-35 Memphis. I'm not going to lie to you. I swear on everything I love, that's the score I was predicting. I'm going to pivot. Gosh, I don't want to pivot to that.
Hey, man.
Because
roll with what you want
if
to
I
roll
pivot,
with.
if I pivot, then it's not giving us credit at all. If I pivot, I'm going 42.
Hey, how you feel is how you feel.
If I pivot, I'm going 42-28. Memphis.
42-28 with the Memphis win. So
Because
it's a final answer.
If it's not that close at the end with Memphis winning like that, then it's not going to be close, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's definitely possible. Like I said, the matchup of their quarterback versus our defense definitely doesn't go in our favor, or their offense versus our defense at all. So hopefully our offense comes to play, or maybe our defense surprises us, and hopefully we're wrong on our predictions. Again, this time we've been a couple times this season, but wrapping up 2024 in the Frisco Bowl, we're predicting a little Memphis victory here, unfortunately, but West Virginia could show up and show out and surprise us in the final game.
Like they have every time we
Neil
picked
Brown
them to lose
staff
this
intact.
year, by the way. Every time we're trying to be realistic and view things, how they've been presented to us from this football team, they come out and they show a completely different side, and they beat the brakes off of whoever they're playing that week and make us look silly. So hopefully they do it again.
Maybe that's
I hope
that could be. I was gonna say could be a good omen. Then could potentially be a good omen. Have this year at least in on a high note. You did in 2024 with a winning record at 7-6, which would be cool to be able to say another winning season in Mountaineer football history as you pass the baton over to the Rich Rod and the Rich Rod era, which super excited for and can't wait to see. And we'll talk more about that in the future. But hopefully West Virginia puts on a good performance in the bowl game. But that's just kind of how we see it now. A few days out from the game there, and that'll kind of wrap up our thoughts on that game. But let's do a little around the Big 12 segment here, as we've done throughout the year on the podcast here. Kind of final opportunity to do it this year, as we can talk about some of the other bowl games that are going on around the conference in addition to ours. As we scroll down here, obviously West Virginia has the earliest bowl game in the conference there, the 9 p.m. kick on ESPN on December 17th in the Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl. But then on Thursday, December 26th, we got Kansas State taking on Rutgers at 5:30 Eastern on ESPN in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. That's one that the Mountaineers played in a few years ago against Minnesota, I believe. Kansas State draws Greg Schiano and Rutgers. Steven, who you think is going to come out on top there? You getting the Big 12 to win with Kansas State, or you think Greg Schiano and old Rutgers gets the W?
Oh, man, what a nostalgic, ironic person for them to be matched up with Greg Schiano and Rutgers, who also a few years ago went back home to Rutgers and has been doing some good things there. Gosh, I want to pick the Wildcats, but something's telling me pick Rutgers. I'm going to go with the Big 12. Go Wildcats.
I think so too, man. I think Kansas State will handle them. I think that Kansas State's, pretty good team throughout this season. Had a couple games where they slipped up, but I think they'll be able to win that one. I'm going to go Kansas State as well. Moving on to another Big 12 bowl game here, we got the Texas Tech Red Raiders, who, of course, beat both the two teams who played for the Big 12 championship game. Interestingly enough, they have a nice claim to fame there with that. They did have a very strong season, of course, handling us in the final game of the season, leading to Neil Brown's demise. But they play a Arkansas Razorbacks team in the Liberty Bowl on ESPN, 7 o'clock Eastern on December 27th, a couple of days after Christmas there. I'm going to ride the Red Raiders. I'm going to support the Big 12 over the SEC in this one. I'm going to go Texas Tech, Steven. I think they get it done there and shine in the Liberty Bowl, get the Big 12 another W. What about you, man?
I think that Texas Tech has been the perfect example of a way of how a team should grow throughout a season, and they've only gotten better from game to game. I think that by the last game against us, they had gotten everything figured out. So I think they're on a hot streak right now. I'm picking the Red Raiders also.
I like it. Riding with the Big 12 thus far. December 28th, we have multiple Big 12 bowl games this day, including a Big 12 versus Big 12 matchup, which we'll get to momentarily, funny enough. But TCU in Louisiana in the Albuquerque Bowl there, in Albuquerque in the New Mexico Bowl there at 2:15 on December 28th on ESPN. I think I'm riding Horned Frogs. I think we'll go Horned Frogs. Steven, what about you?
I'll go opposite this time. I want to support the Big 12, but I like the Raging Cajuns. Give me them.
It's going Louisiana. And then also on December 28th, I think this is an interesting matchup. One of the more interesting Big 12 bowl matchups, in my opinion. You got Iowa State, who made the Big 12 title game, didn't have the best performance in that game. Obviously, Arizona State getting it done there pretty handily. But then you have Miami, who was, the nation's one of the best offenses in the nation this season. Looked like they were going to be a team heading to the CFP as well, maybe out of the ACC before a couple late slip-ups in a row there at the end of the season. And the Pop-Tarts Bowl, I think one of the fan favorite bowls. As we mentioned, you had the giant human Pop-Tart, and then of course they get to eat the giant Pop-Tart at the end, as we talked about some of those promotions. This one will be on ABC at 3:30 on December 28th. Steven, who do you like in this one?
Oh man, I really do like Iowa State. I think Miami's probably going to be the media favorite because of Cam Ward and the way that their offense was this year. But to me, I think that Miami, they had a lot of games there where I was like, are these guys really aren't that legit to me? I mean, they've just had a lot of slip ups, and I think Iowa State has. I also believe that. I'm right there.
Called that Hail Mary.
Yeah, that should have been called differently, but it always shines through in the end, and I never really was confident that Miami was a playoff contender as much as everybody painted it to be. I think Iowa State, in my opinion, is the better football team. I think Rocco Becht is going to come out and he's going to show what he's about, and Iowa State's going to. I don't know if they're going to beat them by a lot, but I'm picking the Cyclones.
Hey, okay. Riding with the Big 12 on that one, and this is the first time I'm going to be the opposite and kind of go against it. I'm going to go with Miami in this one. I do think Iowa State's defense could cause them some problems with just kind of the way it's set up, maybe confuse Cam Ward a little bit, force him to make some mistakes, but also Cam Ward's just that type of quarterback. It's like he makes a ton of mistakes in a game, but then also will throw for like 400 or 500 yards. And if he's able to do that and they're able to run the ball as well, because Iowa State, that has kind of been their weakness, is giving up some stuff in the run game this season. I think Miami's offense will do enough to outlast Iowa State, so I'm going to pick them in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, which brings us to...
I think he should have stayed off social media or whoever posted that clip of him should have kept that off social media with him talking to Shedeur on FaceTime. And did you see that?
I didn't see it.
Oh, yeah, he's all on there, and Shedeur said, who y'all play in your bowl game? And he said, we play Iowa State in the Pop-Tart Bowl. And he said, honestly, I hope it's one of those games where our offense goes crazy and their offense goes crazy, and just whoever wins. And Shedeur said, see, that's where you're selfish, bro. He said, that's why I want to win. He said, you all about the stats. I just want to win.
And that's probably
about that. And I'm like, man, you shouldn't have put that on social media because Iowa State.
Yeah, you get 8 alive on that one.
Iowa State with momentum or motivation, I should say.
A bulletin board material for Matt Campbell.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Thing. It might have affected my pick if I'd known that earlier, but oh well, not with Miami. I already said it. I'm taking it back.
No take backsies.
No take backsies. And then we come to the last game, the nightcap there on December 28th, as we have multiple Big 12 bowl games that day. And this one, as I said, is interesting because you get the multiple Big 12 matchup because the bowl game still had, the Pac-12 rights along with it. So you had to match like a previous Pac-12 team up against the Big 12, and that unfortunately is Colorado. So it's Colorado versus BYU at 7:30 in the Alamo Bowl on ABC on December 28th. 2 Big 12 members in a bowl game, something that I didn't think I'd see this bowl season. But it's also interesting because it's both two teams that looked like they were maybe the favorites all season to play in the Big 12 championship game, and we thought we were going to get that matchup. We don't end up getting it in the Big 12 title game, but we do get it here in the Alamo Bowl, Stephen. And I know we're pro BYU, but also we kind of came around on Colorado throughout the season, I think. And of course, I ate a little bit of crow on them throughout consistently on our Around the Big 12 segments. But who do you think comes out on top as those two teams finally meet up here in this Alamo Bowl?
Yeah, I was in a bit of a what I call a Colorado tornado all season long because I started off really supporting them and then went around to kind of not liking them because of the way that some of the stuff was being, dealt with internally, and then came back around to them because of the way they handled that. And I flip flopped a lot on Colorado this season. Ultimately, I'm fans of their program and fans of Deion Sanders, and I really hope that him and his sons have success. But anyway, I like BYU a lot too. I think this is going to be one of the best bowl games of the entire bowl season, probably.
Yeah, I can see
in
that.
my opinion. Man, oh man, I don't know it. I'm 50-50 on it, to be completely honest with you. Probably going to rock with BYU just because I haven't picked against them this season. I don't know why I should start now. That's just out of sheer because I don't know who to go with. I think Colorado probably has the more talented team from what I've seen.
Yeah, especially star power wise.
Oh yeah, definitely. BYU definitely maybe the more physical team out of the two, though. So it really is. It's an interesting matchup. I'll go BYU though.
Yeah, it's a tough one to call because I think, as you said there, one of the things you said toward the end, BYU probably the more physical team. I would agree with that. And also, it's the BYU defense has kind of been what's carried them a lot this season. So is that defense good enough to slow down Colorado's offense? If it is, I think you got to lean BYU a little bit. And of course, we've been a pro BYU podcast. And just because of that, Stephen, I'm going to do the same thing you did and ride with BYU in this one. Although I think that, as you also said, this could be one of the better bowl games, even though some people might not want to be interested initially because it's two Big 12 teams. I think it's going to be fun to watch and entertaining, but we'll ride with the Cougars on it and see what happens in the Alamo Bowl there on December 28th, which then brings us to the next to last Big 12 team we got to talk about here, and that's on December 31st, the Baylor Bears in the Kinder's Texas Bowl in Houston, Texas at 3:30 on ESPN. Get another matchup against the SEC here. The Baylor Bears taking on the LSU Tigers. Who do you like in this one, Stephen?
Oh man, Baylor Bears! What a story for them this year. Dave Aranda started off the hottest seat in the Big 12 conference, if not, one of them, the hottest seats in the country, and he's turned it around after what they did last season. But gosh, man, I can't see them pulling off an upset over LSU. Unfortunately, I think they're just too talented. Even though LSU has had some games this year where it's been questionable, but I like Nussmeier. I think his name is.
Nussmeier is very good, but I think that Baylor is just red hot right now, man. They started 2-4, finished the year 8-4, reeled off 6 straight wins, and I think that Jake Spavital and his offense got the ability to win a shootout if it gets into a shootout. But Dave Aranda's defenses came around some as well, and it may not have to be a shootout. I'm going to ride with the Baylor Bears just because I think they're red hot and in a good place heading into the game. So I'm going to go with the Big 12 on this one.
I like that. I hope it happens.
And usually in our Around the Big 12 segments, we pick out a game of the week to save for last. We didn't really want to do that here and kind of select out of the bowl games. We just wanted to, I guess, save for last kind of the CFP. So we can talk a little bit about Arizona State because they deserve the mention here at the tail end, obviously being predicted to finish last in the Big 12 conference, winning the whole thing. Cam Scatterbo, so fun to watch. What a workhorse he is. Should have got a Heisman invitation, in my opinion, but doesn't. But they win the Big 12 despite being picked to last. Go get the first round bye in the college football playoff where they'll play the winner of Texas and Clemson. Texas, the 5 seed, Clemson, the 12 seed there in the college football playoff. Arizona State, the 4 seed. But I guess the question here is, Stephen, do you think that Arizona State could make a run in the playoff? Do you think if they face Texas, if they face Clemson, they got a chance to win that game and go on and play in the college football semifinals? What do you think Arizona State's ceiling is here in the 12-team playoff?
I think their ceiling is, I don't know, man. I think Oregon's got in my opinion, I think Oregon's the most talented team in the country. I think they will win the national championship. So I'll say that their ceiling is semifinals. I picked them to go to the quarterfinals. I picked Texas to beat Clemson in the first round and go on to play Arizona State. But I picked Arizona State to beat them. I think Arizona State's got a very, very talented football team, a very underrated football team. I mean, I know everybody now is on Cam Scatterbo. And the talent that he possesses has been overshadowed a lot this year by Ashton Gianti and a lot of the things that some of these other guys have been doing. But I mean, that entire team has played lights out football, and they came out and they really proved to me a little bit more. I knew that going into the Big 12 championship, but I didn't think that they would do what they did to Iowa State. Them doing what they did to them, I think, really kind of proves to me that they're ready to compete. So I hope that they go on and they exceed my expectations of the quarterfinal. But that's where I've got them at right now. I think they got a good chance of beating Texas, which I know everybody holds them high and mighty, and they play in the big bad SEC. I don't think Texas is as good as they say they are. They are a good football team. I'm not holding that from them. But the good teams, the best teams that they have played this year, they have struggled with or lost to. So I'm just saying that's going to come to a head at some point, and I think a team like Arizona State is a team that could exploit that.
I agree. It could potentially happen. I think that that's a better matchup for them than if they do have to play Clemson, because then I'd worry about Clemson's defense being able to shut down Camp Scattaboo or at least contain him enough to slow him down. And then that could be a worse matchup, but we'll see what happens. I hope to see Arizona State, go on a little run. That'd be great because they seem like, an improbable like team of destiny type feel, just predicted last and then
It'll be good
end
for
up
the Big
winning the
12.
whole thing and going in here. Yeah, it'd be great for the Big 12. And if you want to watch them potentially do that, you'll watch their game, of course, after the first round. They got the bye, so they'll play in the second round there, and they'll play on January 1st, which is a Wednesday, in the Peach Bowl at 1 o'clock Eastern on ESPN. So that's what the Big 12 has going on throughout bowl season, and of course the CFP will be going on as well here as we get into January, and we can discuss that on future live streams, future shows here on the Country Roads webcast. Just keep it tuned in with us as we'll probably talk a little bit about that. We'll definitely talk about the coaching staff as it builds and the roster as it builds, and of course one thing that we can also talk about, Stephen, is a little bit of WVU basketball here. That's what we're going to talk about before we wrap up here, because there is some pieces of news. Obviously, recently, West Virginia beats North Carolina Central 79-45. They have 2 more non-conference games before they get into Big 12 play with Kansas on December 31st. But I think the main story, of course, is Tucker DeVries out indefinitely, upper body injury. I believe it's, of course, related to his shoulder that he had surgery on throughout the offseason. Don't know how long he'll be out. Hopefully it's not too long, because that could hinder this team. But how are you feeling about WVU basketball without Tucker DeVries? Do you think they can still have a decent season if he's out, for a lengthy amount of time? Just kind of your thoughts there on how the season's gone and how that kind of changes things moving forward.
It definitely does change things, and it definitely is a hit. I don't want to paint it like it's not, but I mean, West Virginia's had players that have stepped up in a really big way on multiple occasions in these games. I know, the games that everybody, I guess, thinks about is the ones against Gonzaga and Arizona, the ones we won, where DeVries, was a large part of that. But, Amani Hansberry stepped up in a big way. Javon Small stepped up in a big way. Jonathan Powell, even though he's a freshman, I think he's been very consistent in the way that he's played all season long up to this point. And so, like I said, I don't want to paint that like it's not a big blow. It definitely is. You definitely got to change some things around, especially on the offensive side of the ball, without Tucker DeVries. With what we've heard of speculation, I really hope that the length that we've heard that it isn't very accurate. That's all speculation, of course. It's not anything official. But you hope it's not that long. You hope that we can at least get him back somewhere in the realm of, early conference play or midway through conference play. But if not, and what we've heard is true, then you just got to hope that for the best for his health. You know what I mean? You just want him to get better. And if it is a lingering injury,
he has a future,
Exactly. That's exactly right. So.
Yeah, but I could agree with you. I like the freshman stepping up. Powell having a big game, leading the team in scoring, and Tenor leading the team in assists there against North Carolina Central. And the good thing is you play Mercyhurst and Bethune-Cookman next, and then Mercyhurst after that. So that's your next 2 games before you get into conference play, where things get a little bit tougher. So at least you have time to maybe get some of these guys healthy. Let's not forget Jaden Stone, who was believed to maybe be a starter in this team. He was a 20 points per game scorer at his previous school, still has yet to play for this team. So maybe if you can get at least him or Tucker back at some point in conference play, that could potentially help you. It hurts this team a little bit, obviously losing, one of your main guys there in Tucker DeVries. But I still think this team is going to play hard every night and have a chance to win games. And I like, with Darren DeVries at the helm, I think that they're going to fight and battle in every contest. So I think this team still has a chance to be a tournament team. And hopefully if Tucker does come back, those chances certainly increase. But that's kind of what I wanted to talk about there in regards to WVU basketball a little bit. But any other thoughts on WVU basketball before we get ready to close this one up?
I do. I just want to say, not that we not obviously optimistic about what this basketball team can do this year. Obviously, still are, and what talent that we've shown that we have. I think that we can go far still as with the team that it is. But let's not forget, man. I mean, this was kind of a test season in some ways in basketball. After last season, the way that it went and the whole situation. I don't know. I think that what we get with the basketball team is very much a night and day difference, and I'm very appreciative. Even if it's not going to be just speaking, if it is worst case scenario and Tucker's not there and it doesn't go as well as what it's looking like it's going to go,
right.
I won't be so disappointed.
Still bright with
the future
with
is
Coach
still
DeVries.
bright, right? That's the point I'm getting to. I digress a lot. You guys know that.
No, you're good, brother. I think that kind of leads into what I want to say here at the tail end. We've talked a little bit about, both sports. We've talked about the coaching change and, of course, previewed this bowl game and talked a little Big 12 as well. And hope you guys have enjoyed this episode as much as we've enjoyed recording it here. And appreciate you guys tuning in for episode 213 here, the Frisco Bowl preview and predictions. But I think you got to end it with a shout out to Wren Baker. I think that Wren Baker, golf clap for Wren for sure. I think he solidified himself within Mountaineer Nation, in my opinion, as a guy that has legendary status right now.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we never had the coal rush. He gets that. He makes a great hire on the women's side, not once but twice. They're really impressive. Darren DeVries we're super impressed with. And, of course, your major sports are basketball and football. He kills 2 hires on both the basketball sides there for both the women's and men's team. And now in football, gets the best possible hire, in my opinion, that could bring us back to potential glory here with Rich Rod. So I think Wren Baker deserves our kudos, deserves his flowers here before we wrap up shop on this episode. So that's kind of just one of the final things I wanted to say, Stephen. But you got any other things here you want to plug or say here before we close up shop here on our bowl game preview?
That's a perfect way to end it for me. I think that's a perfect shout out, and you can't say enough about the job that Wren Baker's done, and we are major Wren Baker supporters.
Absolutely. As everyone through Mountaineer Nation should be. Excitement coming back to all the sports really around here, the major sports, and I think it's going to be fun to see what happens as it progresses. Yeah.
That man's comments continue to make me upset every single day.
Yeah, I get that. Hey, but it's all good. It's not too much longer with that one,
Yeah, only a few more months, thankfully.
Lord Almighty. How much that's the positive side of that one. But other than that, it's been, pretty much all really positive things. I think, for the fan base has kind of begun to heal, and hopefully that healing process can continue with the 2025 season under Rich Rod, because once the wins come, even those that have been naysayers will jump back on board, and I think we'll be having a lot of fun with Mountaineer football in the future. But before then, we got this Frisco Bowl, and we hope West Virginia plays great in it, and you've heard our thoughts. If you have any, throw them in the comments there. We always appreciate those interactions here. If you're watching the YouTube version, we appreciate you doing that. Hit the thumbs up button. Give us a like on the video before you head out. Helps a ton with the YouTube algorithm. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for a ton of Mountaineer football coverage. And if you're on the audio side, listening on any podcast platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Radio, iHeartRadio, you name it, leave us a rating, preferably a 5-star one. Helps us a ton. But we really appreciate you guys here throughout Mountaineer Nation that are members here of the CRW community. Can't thank you guys enough for the support throughout the season. It's been a fun one covering this football team, and we're already looking forward to covering the 2025 team. And despite the fact the offseason coming up, we'll still be bringing you podcast episodes periodically. Of course, we'll be back to review the bowl game and talk whatever happens throughout the offseason. But for my co-host, Steven, as always, I'm Jordan Cruz. And until next time, let's go Mountaineers.
If you really want to know, then come on, let's go. Take a stroll down those